A once-feared warship descended from orbit, leaving a devastated world in its wake. No defense, no plea, no treaty could halt here until a lone envoy dared to see a flicker of personhood beneath the metal and rage. In that moment, everything changed. The lights in the Celesta Nexus dimmed as the high-resolution feeds activated. Elena Maris felt her throat tighten as the footage began to play across the curved wall screens. The beast officially designated Valeth Dread in intelligence briefings hung suspended over Jupiter's largest fuel depot, massive and sleek. Its hull gleamed with an oily sheen that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the starlight. Even in the grainy reconnaissance footage, there was something predatory about its silhouette. 22 minutes. General Rivenholt announced to the assembled Liaosheng Federation officials. His voice was flat, clinical. That's how long it took to neutralize our 3 forward outposts. Complete tactical superiority. Elena studied the data scrolling beside the visuals. Energy signatures, weapons discharge patterns, troop casualty counts. Her training in interplanetary war psychology had prepared her for analyzing conflict data, but nothing quite prepared one for watching real-time devastation. The satellite imagery showed plumes of smoke rising from civilian sectors, once bustling community hubs reduced to rubble and ash. The pattern is consistent with previous attacks, Elena noted, searching for some logic in the chaos. Military targets are eliminated with surgical precision, while civilian infrastructure remains largely intact until resistance leadership is identified. Holt nodded grimly. Then the psychological warfare begins. The beast doesn't just want to win, it wants to break spirits. The footage shifted to a close-up of the vessel itself. Despite the distance from which it was captured, there was something unnervingly organic about its movements. Not mechanical fluid, almost graceful in its terrible purpose. Intelligence believes it's a weaponized biological entity, continued Holt. The Valaran Empire's ultimate living weapon. No conscience, no mercy, no ability to negotiate. Just a perfect instrument of war. Elena's eyes remained fixed on the screen. She'd spent years studying the irreconcilables entities programmed or neurologically manipulated beyond the capacity for negotiation, but this was different. Something about the beast's movements suggested not mindlessness, but intention. "Has anyone attempted communication?" she asked. Laughter rippled through the room, though it held no humor. "Communication?" Holt's voice dripped with disdain. "Ambassador Maris, we're not dealing with a diplomatic partner. This is a weapon. It doesn't talk, it destroys." The emergency summons arrived less than 6 hours later. Elena stood before the Senate High Council of the Liaosheng Federation. Her formal diplomatic attire hastily donned, hair still damp from the sonic shower. Sleep had eluded her after the briefing. Instead, she'd pored over every scrap of intelligence regarding the beast that she could access. "The Valaran delegation will arrive at Celesta Nexus in 48 hours, announced High Senator Verena Pell. They've agreed to a negotiation session. A murmur of surprise swept through the chamber. "Negotiation? With what?" someone called out. "With whom?" corrected Elena automatically, drawing several sharp glances. Senator Pell's expression remained grave. "The Valarans claim they can control the beast, direct its targets, if not its methods. They've offered to redirect its attention away from Liaosheng territory in exchange for certain concessions." "What concessions?" asked a voice from the back. "That will be determined during negotiations," Pell replied. "And Ambassador Maris will lead our delegation." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "Senator, with respect, I specialize in war psychology, not high-stakes diplomatic negotiations with monsters?" Pell finished for her. "That's precisely why you've been selected, Ambassador. You've written extensively on communicating with entities neurologically compromised beyond standard diplomatic protocols." "Yes, in theory, but the beast—" "Has a name," interrupted an unfamiliar voice. All heads turned toward a tall woman in the plainest of attire, standing at the chamber entrance. Dr. Marin Sulai, Federation's leading xenoneurologist, her reputation preceding her like a shockwave. According to intercepted Velaran communications, Sulai continued, approaching the central platform with unhurried confidence. The beast was once Liak of House Kalar, a Velaran military strategist of considerable renown. She activated her datapad, projecting a classified document into the air before them. Before being transformed into a weapon, Liak Kalar was known for advocating peaceful resolutions to border conflicts, an unusual position among Velaran military elite. Elena stared at the projection, her mind racing. They weaponized one of their own strategists? Why? Efficiency, Sulai replied simply. Why build an artificial intelligence for warfare when you can repurpose an existing military genius? The Velarans excel at neural reconditioning. They've taken Liak's strategic brilliance and stripped away everything else: conscience, identity, autonomy. Elena felt sick. So the beast is a person, a prisoner in her own mind. Was a person, corrected General Holt, who had entered behind Sulai. Whatever humanity Liak Kalar once possessed has been erased. You're not dealing with a hostage situation, Ambassador. You're facing a weapon with a tragic backstory. Nothing more. But as Elena reviewed the footage once more that night in her quarters, she couldn't shake the feeling that something more remained beneath the surface. The way the beast moved with purpose. Not just programming. The patterns of its attacks strategic, not merely destructive. If there was even a fragment of Liak Kalar still trapped within that weaponized form, perhaps there was hope for communication after all. Not with the beast, but with the person it had once been. The stakes couldn't be higher. 5 billion Federation citizens, dozens of worlds, countless lives hanging in the balance. Elena had 48 hours to prepare for a negotiation unlike any in recorded history, with an entity the military insisted couldn't be reasoned with. She began by diving deep into the technical files. Every satellite image, every reconnaissance video, every tactical analysis of the beast's Liak's movements. She studied the orbital patterns, weapons discharge sequences, targeting algorithms. The precision was chilling. Military installations neutralized with surgical strikes. Command centers located and eliminated within seconds. But what struck Elena most was what the beast didn't do. Civilian casualties were minimal, unless resistance continued after military defeat. There was restraint, their economy of force, rather than indiscriminate slaughter. Was that programming efficiency or something more? Next came the intercepted Velaran communications. Most were encrypted beyond Federation capability, but fragments had been deciphered. References to the asset and reconditioning maintenance schedules, clinical, detached language that reduced a person to equipment. But one partially decrypted message caught Elena's attention. The temporary breakthrough in neural partition. Mentioned Kalar Estate. Recommend immediate cycle reset before memory contamination spreads. Memory contamination. The clinical term sent a chill down Elena's spine. What memories were trying to break through? And how might they be leveraged to reach whatever remained of Liak Kalar? Dr. Sulai arrived at Elena's quarters as the station's lighting dimmed to simulate evening. The neuroscientist carried nothing but a small data crystal, which she inserted into Elena's terminal without preamble. "This is everything we have on Velaran neural reconditioning," she said. "Most is theoretical, based on limited intelligence and a few rescued subjects from their earlier experiments." "Earlier experiments?" Elena asked, scanning the appearing files. "The beastly isn't their first living weapon, just their most successful." Sulai's expression darkened. "The others either died from neural collapse or retained enough self-awareness to commit suicide rather than carry out their missions." Elena felt her stomach turn. "And you believe Liak might still have some self-awareness?" "I believe it's possible." Sulai highlighted a neural scan. Velaran brains differ from human ones in structure, but not in basic function. Memory isn't stored in a single location but distributed throughout neural networks. You can suppress it, partition it, but completely erasing it is nearly impossible, Elena finished. Precisely. The reconditioning creates artificial neural pathways that override natural ones. But under extreme stress, or with specific triggers, original pathways might temporarily reconnect. Specific triggers like what? Sulai's eyes met hers. Names, identity markers. The most fundamental aspects of self are often the most deeply embedded and resistant to erasure. Elena nodded slowly, an idea forming. What about Velaran body language, nonverbal communication? Limited research, but we have some baseline references. Sulai pulled up another file. Ear positioning is particularly expressive. Lowered ears, signal recognition or submission. Raised ears indicate threat assessment or aggression. For hours they worked, developing a rudimentary translation system for Velaran neural cues and nonverbal signals. By morning, Elena had compiled a negotiation approach, unlike any in diplomatic history, one that addressed not the weapon, but the person trapped inside it. General Holt was predictably dismissive. "This is fantasy," he declared, when Elena presented her approach to the Security Council. "You're projecting humanity onto a mechanism designed specifically to lack it. With respect, General, we have nothing to lose by trying," Elena countered. "The beast has destroyed 3 outposts already. Conventional military responses have failed. If there's even a chance of reaching whatever remains of Liak Kalar..." "You're delusional," Holt cut her off. "Sentimental. Hoping for a fairy tale where you awaken the slumbering princess with the power of compassion." Elena held her ground. "I'm being pragmatic. 5 billion lives are at stake. Traditional negotiation won't work with the Valerans because they believe they hold all the power through their weapon. But if we could somehow reach past their conditioning..." "You'll get yourself killed," Holt snapped. "And likely accelerate the beast's timetable for attack." Senator Pell, who had listened silently until now, raised a hand. "Ambassador Maris's approach is unconventional, but these are unconventional circumstances. Prepare the secure negotiation chamber according to her specifications." Holt's face darkened, but he offered no further objection. 24 hours later, Elena stood in the dimly lit chamber, heartbeat thundering in her ears. The room was minimalist: a single table, 2 chairs, soft, ambient lighting. Dr. Sulai monitored vital signs from an adjacent room, while security forces stood ready to intervene at the first sign of aggression. The airlock cycled. Elena took a deep breath, centering herself as the massive door slid open. The beast entered like a storm front. All contained power and lethal grace. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, Liak's Velaran physiology was evident in the elongated limbs and distinctive facial structure. But the similarities to normal Valarans ended there. Her skin was covered with an integument that seemed part armor, part living tissue. Eyes that should have been amber were now an unnatural electric blue, scanning the room with mechanical precision. Not once did those eyes blink. Elena remained perfectly still, allowing herself to be assessed. The security team had insisted on a barrier between them, but she'd refused. This was about trust her, at least the appearance of it. "I am Elena Maris, ambassador of the Liaosheng Federation," she said, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "I address you as Liak of House Kalar." The effect was immediate and unsettling. The beast Liak went, utterly still, head tilted slightly as if listening to something only she could hear. For a fraction of a second, those electric blue eyes flickered, and Elena would have sworn she saw a flash of their natural amber beneath. Then, with alarming swiftness, Liak lunged forward, stopping just short of Elena's position. A low, mechanical growl emanated from her throat, not quite speech. not quite animal sound. In Elena's earpiece, Dr. Sulai's voice was tense but controlled. Cardiac response spiking. The name triggered something. Elena held her ground, refusing to back away despite every instinct screaming for retreat. "Liak Kalar," she repeated, softer this time. "That's who you were, who you still are, beneath what they've done to you." The beast's ears, more angular than a typical Velaran's, lowered slightly, then snapped back up. Internal conflict, according to their research. Elena pressed the advantage. "I know you were a strategist who advocated for peace. I know the Valaran Empire took that from you, took everything from you. But they couldn't erase you completely." Another growl. But different, this timeless, mechanical. More organic. Liak's head tilted again, and one hand moved to touch the insignia embedded in her armor plating. The crest of House Kalar. Elena realized. A memory surfacing, however briefly. "Cardiac rhythm stabilizing," came Sulai's update. "Respiration patterns shifting toward normal Valaran baseline." For a moment, hope flared in Elena's chest. Then, without warning, Liak's posture shifted. The moment of recognition vanished, replaced by the cold, calculated stance of the weapon. She backed away, eyes, once again that unnatural blue, scanning the room as if seeing it for the first time. The first session ended when Liak simply turned and walked out, returning to the Valaran ship without further interaction. "That wasn't a failure," Elena insisted during the debriefing, despite Holt's skepticism. "We saw recognition, however briefly. The name triggered something." "It triggered aggression," Holt countered. "Not aggression confusion," corrected Dr. Sulai, reviewing the biometric data. The neural patterns showed momentary realignment, consistent with memory access, then suppression. The conditioning reasserted itself, but not before we glimpsed what lies beneath. "So, what's your plan?" Holt demanded. "Keep saying her name until the power of love breaks the spell?" Elena ignored the sarcasm. "We continue addressing the person, not the weapon. We build on what we've learned, and we watch for windows of opportunity, moments when Liak Kalar resurfaces." "And if those moments never come? If the beast attacks?" Elena met his gaze steadily. "Then we've lost nothing by trying." News of the unusual negotiation approach spread throughout Celesta Nexus. Some staff regarded Elena with newfound respect, others with undisguised skepticism. A few even approached her with stories of loved ones on the outposts already destroyed, their expressions a mixture of desperate hope and barely contained grief. The weight of 5 billion lives pressed heavier on her shoulders. The second negotiation session began much like the first. But this time, Elena was prepared with a new approach. When Liak entered, Elena stood beside a holographic display showing the insignia of House Kalar. "Liak Kalar," she began, watching closely for reaction. "I've been studying your house's history. Before the Valaran Empire's current military expansion, House Kalar was known for its diplomatic corps, not its warriors." The beast stared at the hologram, unmoving. But Elena noticed her ears slower than before, a sign of attentiveness rather than aggression. "Your personal insignia contains the Kalar motto, strength to protect, wisdom to preserve." Elena continued. "You lived by those words once. You negotiated peace between the Centauri colonies when war seemed inevitable." A small sound escaped Liaknot, quite speech, but not the mechanical growl from before either. Her head tilted, and one hand moved slightly forward, as if reaching for the hologram before dropping back to her side. "Neural activity increasing in the temporal region," Sulai reported through the earpiece. "Memory centers activating." Elena took a careful step forward. "The person you were still exists. Liak, the strategist, the peacemaker. The Valarans couldn't erase you completely." For a moment, Liak remained perfectly still. Then, with sudden violence, she kicked a chair across the room, nodded Elena away from her, as if rejecting something. Her breathing had become ragged, less mechanically precise. "I don't see a beast," Elena said softly. "I see Liak Kalar." The Velaran's head snapped up, eyes meeting Elena's. For the briefest moment, amber broke through electric blue. Recognition or, at least confusion, flickered across features that had been blank and expressionless before. Then, just as quickly, the moment passed. The beast's posture straightened, eyes once again that unnatural blue. But instead of attacking or retreating, she simply stood there, studying Elena with what might have been curiosity. Progress, however small. News of the second session spread quickly through official and unofficial channels. Political pressure mounted as some Federation officials demanded more aggressive approaches, while others cautiously supported Elena's unconventional methods. "You're making progress," Dr. Sulai confirmed, reviewing the biometric data. "The name acts as a trigger for memory access. Each time you use it, the response is stronger and lasts longer." "But is it enough?" Elena wondered aloud. "We don't have the luxury of gradual breakthroughs. The Valaran delegation is growing impatient. They expected us to capitulate by now." "There's another option," Sulai said hesitantly. "We could attempt a more direct trigger in a controlled environment, something that might create a stronger memory response." "What did you have in mind?" Sulai pulled up a classified file. Before her reconditioning, Liak Kalar was not just a strategist, but a master of chess-like game called Tariq. Her distinctive playing style was legendary among Valarans. Elena leaned forward, intrigued. "You're suggesting we use the game to reach her?" "It's a calculated risk," Sulai acknowledged. "The muscle memory, the strategic thinking patterns, they're encoded differently than identity memories. They might be more accessible, less suppressed by the reconditioning. Or it could trigger a violent response if she perceives it as a threat." Sulai nodded gravely. "Hence the controlled environment. Maximum security. But we need to make the attempt. The connection we've established is promising, but fragile." The plan was set in motion despite General Holt's vehement objections. A secure chamber was prepared with a Tariq board, obtained from Federation archives, positioned centrally. Elena spent hours studying the basic rules and strategies, though she harbored no illusions about matching the skill of a Valaran master. The third session began with Liak entering more cautiously than before, her gaze immediately fixed on the Tariq board, body going rigid. "Liak Kalar," Elena said softly. "I understand this game was once important to you. Would you show me how it's played?" For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. Then, with deliberate slowness, Liak approached the board. Her movements were different now, less the predatory stalking of the beast, more the measured pace of a strategist assessing a situation. She stopped at the board's edge, staring down at the pieces. One hand-clawed and armored reached out, hovering over a piece before withdrawing. "It's all right," Elena encouraged. "This is a safe place." Liak's eyes flickered from blue to amber, then back again. Internal conflict visibly played out across her features, as two sets of programming, the original person and the imposed weapon warred for control. Suddenly, with decisive movement, she grasped a playing piece. The motion was awkward, those clawed hands not designed for such delicate manipulation, but the intent was clear. She placed the piece in the opening position of what Elena recognized from her research as the Kalar defense, Liak's signature strategy. "Breakthrough," whispered Sulai through the earpiece. "Motor memory accessing strategic centers." Elena carefully mirrored the move on her side of the board. "The Kalar defense," she acknowledged. "Your innovation." Something remarkable happened then. Liak's posture shifted subtly, becoming less rigid. Her breathing pattern changed, and most significantly, when she looked up at Elena, her eyes remained amber for several seconds before flickering back to blue. They played in silence. Elena making basic moves while Liak responded with increasingly fluid and complex strategies. With each move, the beast seemed to recede, and Liak Kilar emerged more clearly, not fully restored, but present in a way she hadn't been before. When the game concluded with Elena's inevitable defeat, Liak did something unprecedented. She carefully reset the board, positioning each piece in its starting place with meticulous precision. Then, she looked directly at Elena and uttered a single, raspy word. "Again?" The room froze. It was the first verbal communication since her reconditioning, according to all records. "Of course," Elena replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I'd be honored." They played 3 more games, each ending in Elena's swift defeat, but each bringing more of Liak's humanity to the surface. By the final game, her movements were almost natural, her breathing rhythm normal, her eyes remaining amber for minutes at a time. As they concluded, Liak looked up, meeting Elena's gaze directly. "They took everything," she managed, each word clearly painful to form. "Not everything," Elena replied gently. "Not you. Not completely." Liak's expression contorted with effort. "Not safe. They coming." Before Elena could respond, Liak stood abruptly, eyes flashing back to that unnatural blue. The beast reasserted control, but not before Liak had issued her warning. The session ended with Liak returning to the Valaran ship, leaving Elena with both hope and dread in equal measure. "She's warning us," Elena reported to the emergency council session. "The Valarans are planning something. They've seen our progress with Liak, and they're not going to allow it to continue." "Or the beast is manipulating you," General Holt countered, creating a false sense of trust before striking. "You weren't there," Elena insisted. "You didn't see the transition, the struggle. That was Liak Kilar speaking, not the weapon they created." Senator Pell raised a hand for silence. "Whether genuine warning or manipulation, we must proceed with caution. The Valaran delegation has requested the final negotiation session take place on Kepler 442b, rather than Celesta Nexus, a remote outpost with minimal Federation presence," Elena noted. "Why would they?" "Because they're planning to reclaim their asset," interrupted Dr. Sulai, entering with a datapad. "I've decrypted more of their communications. They're concerned about neural contamination, and have scheduled Liak for comprehensive reconditioning immediately following the negotiations." Elena felt ice in her veins. They're going to wipe her mind again, erase whatever progress we've made in reaching Liak Kilar. "It's their weapon," Holt said bluntly. "They can maintain it as they see fit." "She's not an it," Elena snapped, surprising herself with her vehemence. "She's a person, a prisoner in her own mind, and she's fighting to break free." "The question remains," Pell interjected. "Do we agree to their terms? Move the negotiation to Kepler 442b? Elena thought quickly. "If we refuse, they might simply abort negotiations entirely. Take Liak back for reconditioning immediately, at least on Kepler. I have one more chance to reach her." "It's too dangerous," Holt objected. "Minimal security, no backup." "I'll go with a small team," Elena countered. "Dr. Sulai for scientific expertise, plus whatever security detail you deem necessary. General. But the session itself must be one-on-one, as before." After heated debate, the council reluctantly agreed. Within hours, Elena found herself aboard a Federation diplomatic vessel bound for Kepler 442b, a frontier trading outpost where Federation law held only nominal influence. The journey gave Elena time to prepare, but also to doubt. Was she projecting humanity onto a weapon because she couldn't accept the alternative? Was her approach putting 5 billion lives at risk because of misplaced compassion? No. She'd seen the recognition in Liak's eyes, heard her speak. Whatever the beast was, Liak Kilar still existed beneath the reconditioning, fighting to resurface. Kepler 442b orbited a distant sun, its surface a patchwork of rudimentary settlements and untamed wilderness. The negotiation was to take place in an abandoned mining facility, converted hastily into a diplomatic space. As Elena's team conducted final security sweeps, Dr. Sulai approached with concern etched on her features. "Elena, I've been analyzing the Valaran transmission patterns. There's unusual activity around Kepler, more ships than necessary for a diplomatic escort." "You think it's a trap?" Elena asked. "I think the Valarans are prepared for multiple outcomes," Sulai replied carefully, "including forcible retrieval of their asset if necessary." Elena nodded grimly. "Then we need to be prepared as well. If Liek gives any indication she's choosing to break free from their control, the Valarans would rather destroy her than lose her," Sulai finished. "Their communications make that clear." The negotiation chamber was sparse compared to the facilities on Celesta Nexusa, repurposed mining operations room, with hastily installed diplomatic furnishings. Elena positioned herself at the center, foregoing even the minimal protection of a table or barrier. This would be about trust, completely and irrevocably. When Liak entered, Elena immediately noticed differences. The Valaran's movements were more erratic, her breathing irregular. Most tellingly, her eyes flickered constantly between blue and amber, as if the internal struggle had intensified. "Liak Kelar," Elena began softly. "I'm here to help you, if you'll allow it." The beast growled. But it wasn't the mechanical sound from their first meeting. This was organic, pained. Liak's hand moved to her temple, claws scraping against the neural interface visible beneath her skin. "They're hurting," she managed, the words clearly causing physical pain. "The reconditioning?" Elena asked, taking a careful step forward. Liak nodded jerkily. "Remote. Adjustments. Punishment for remembering." Elena's heart raced. This was both breakthrough and Crisis Liak communicating directly, but clearly in distress as the Valarans attempted to reassert control remotely. "Fight it, Liak," she urged. "You're stronger than their programming." A bitter sound, almost a laugh, escaped Liak's throat. "Not programming. Pain. Compliance through pain." Understanding dawned horribly. The reconditioning wasn't just neurological rewiring. It was a system of punishment and reward, pain and relief. The Valarans controlled their asset through torture. Before Elena could respond, the facility's alarms blared to life. Through her earpiece came General Holt's terse warning. "Valaran forces breaching the south entrance. They're coming for the beast." Elena locked eyes with Liak. "You have a choice now. Right now. You can be who they made you, the beast, the weapon. Or you can be Liak Kelar again." Liak's expression contorted with effort. "Not that simple. Can't just choose." "You can," Elena insisted. "You've been fighting their control since the moment I spoke your name. You warned me. You played Tariq. You remembered." The sound of weapons fire echoed from beyond the chamber. Time was running out. "They're led by Commander Korvex," came Holt's update. "Former Velaran military, now Imperial enforcer." Liak's head snapped up at the name, eyes flashing amber. "Korvex!" she hissed, and the word carried volumes of history. The chamber doors burst open. A squad of Valaran soldiers entered, weapons raised, flanking a tall, aristocratic Valaran in ornate armor. Commander Korvex surveyed the scene with cold calculation. "Step away from the asset. Ambassador," he ordered, voice smooth as polished stone. "It's time for scheduled maintenance." Elena held her ground. "Her name is Liak Kelar. She's not an asset. She's a person." Korvex laughed, the sound entirely without humor. "Is that what you believe? That speaking a name magically restores personhood?" He turned to Liak. "Beast, Combat Protocol Alpha. Neutralize the human." Liak went rigid, eyes flashing blue. She took one mechanical step toward Elena, then stopped, body trembling with visible effort. "Liak," Elena said quietly, "you have to choose." "The asset doesn't choose," Korvax snapped. "It obeys. Beast! I said neutralize her." What happened next unfolded with breathtaking speed. Liak lunged not at Elena, but toward the weapons rack near the Valaran soldiers. In one fluid motion, she seized a plasma rifle and fired, not at Elena, or even at Korvax, but at the fuel cells stacked along the far wall. The explosion rocked the chamber, sending everyone staggering. Through the smoke and chaos, Liak moved with terrifying efficiency, disabling the Valaran soldiers with precise strikes that incapacitated without killing. When she reached Korvax, she seized him by the throat, lifting him easily. Her eyes, now steadily amber, bored into his. "My name," she growled, voice stronger than before, "is Liak Kalar." Then she threw him bodily into his remaining soldiers and turned to Elena, extending a hand through the smoke and flames. "We go, now." Elena didn't hesitate. She took Liak's hand, and together they fled through the chaos of the mining facility, alarms blaring and sprinkler systems drenching everything in artificial rain. "This way," Liak directed, pulling Elena down a maintenance corridor as Valaran troops regrouped behind them. "Hangar Bay, small ships." Elena activated her earpiece. "Dr. Sulai, meet us at the hangar bay. Bring whatever security team is still with you." They raced through the facility, Liak moving with preternatural speed while adjusting her pace for Elena's human limitations. Twice, they encountered Valaran patrols. Twice, Liak neutralized them with efficient, non-lethal strikes. "You're not killing them," Elena observed as they continued their flight. "Not Beast," Liak replied simply. "Not anymore." The hangar bay loomed ahead, its massive doors partially open. Dr. Sulai and 2 Federation security officers were already there, securing a small transport vessel. "Hurry!" Sulai called, waving them forward as weapons fire erupted behind them. They sprinted across the open space, Valaran forces converging from multiple entrances. Korvax's voice boomed over the facility's communication system. "Attention all forces! The asset has malfunctioned. Capture protocols authorized. Lethal force approved only as last resort. The Empire wants its property back." Liak's expression hardened at the word property. She pushed Elena toward the waiting ship, then turned to face the approaching forces. "Go," she ordered. "I'll hold them." "Not without you," Elena insisted. "You've come too far to surrender now." For a moment, Liak's eyes softened. Then she nodded once, decisively, and together they made the final dash to the transport. The ship lifted off amidst a hail of weapons fire, its shields straining against the assault. Dr. Sulai worked frantically at the navigation console while the security officers returned fire through the closing bay doors. "Where to?" Sulai asked, hands flying over the controls. Liak moved to the tactical display. "Helix Nebula," she said, indicating a region of space dense with radiation and stellar debris. "Hard to track. No people there." "People?" Elena asked, surprised. "Valaran resistance," Liak clarified. "Against Empire. Old friends." She struggled with the word, as if the concept itself was difficult to access. The ship broke atmosphere, accelerating hard as Valaran pursuit crafts scrambled to follow. Liak took the weapons controls without asking, her movements fluid and precise as she laid down suppressive fire to cover their escape. "Jump engines charging," Sulai announced. 30 seconds to translocation." Liak fired one last precision shot, disabling the lead pursuit craft without destroying it. Then she sat back, watching the stars blur as the jump engines engaged and hurled them across space toward the sanctuary of the Helix Nebula. In the sudden quiet of successful escape, Elena studied Liak closely. The Valaran sat rigid, eyes closed, clearly in pain. The neural interface, Elena realized, They're still trying to control you remotely. Liak nodded without opening her eyes. We'll pass. Distance helps. Nebula radiation better. We need to remove it completely, Dr. Sulai interjected, approaching with a medical scanner. The interface is integrated with your central nervous system, but it might be possible to… Later, Liak interrupted. Nebula first, safety first. The journey to the Helix Nebula took 3 days of tense, careful navigation. Liak spent much of it in a self-induced trance-like state, managing the pain of the neural interface as its connection to Valeran control systems weakened with distance. During the brief periods, she was fully conscious. Elena learned more about who Liak Kellar had been and who she might become again. House Kellar, Liak explained haltingly, each word carefully formed as if remembering how to speak. Diplomatic Corps, 5 generations. Then, war faction rose to power. Those who opposed, reconditioning. How many others like you? Elena asked gently. Hundreds, Liak replied, eyes haunted. Most didn't survive process. Minds broke. Bodies rejected changes. Her hand moved unconsciously to the neural interface at her temple. I was compatible. Perfect subject. And the Valeran resistance? Former House members? Scientists? Those who remember, before Empire became this. She gestured vaguely at herself, indicating what the Empire had done to her. As they approached the swirling gases of the Helix Nebula, Liak grew more alert, guiding them through invisible corridors of stable space within the radiation storms. The nebula itself was breathtaking, vast spirals of cosmic dust illuminated by the radiation of dying stars, creating an ever-shifting tapestry of light and shadow. Beautiful, Elena murmured, watching the displays. Dangerous, Liak corrected. But yes, beautiful too. Deep within the nebula, hidden by radiation and stellar debris, they found the Resistance Outpost, a repurposed research station built into a massive asteroid. Old, but functional. Its systems adapted to operate within the nebula's unique conditions. They were met in the docking bay by a small group of Velerans. Their expressions, a mixture of shock, hope, and wariness at the sight of Liak. One stepped forward elderly by Valeran standards, with the distinctive markings of a scientist. Liak Kellar, she breathed, voice trembling. Is it truly you? Liak straightened, visibly struggling to maintain composure, as memories clearly flooded back in this familiar environment. Master Nareth, she acknowledged. I remember you. You taught strategy at the academy. The old Veleran's eyes filled with tears. We thought you lost forever. When they took you for reconditioning, no one survives with their self intact. Not intact, Liak admitted, touching the neural interface. Broken, but remembering. Master Nareth turned to Elena and Sulai with newfound respect. You have done what we thought impossible. You have brought back one taken by the reconditioning. Not completely, Elena cautioned. The process has only begun. Then we shall continue it, Nareth declared. We have been developing counter-protocols since the reconditioning program began, never successfully implemented until now. The days that followed were among the most intense of Elena's life. The resistance scientists worked tirelessly to understand and counteract the neural reconditioning that had transformed Liak into the beast. Dr. Sulai integrated seamlessly with their team, her expertise in xenoneurology proving invaluable. Liak subjected herself to grueling sessions in the laboratory, enduring pain and disorientation as the scientists carefully mapped the changes to her neural pathways and began the delicate process of restoration. Between sessions, as Liak's strength and lucidity gradually improved, Elena learned more about who she had been. House Kellar had stood for centuries as advocates of diplomatic solutions. Even as the Valaran Empire grew increasingly militaristic. Liak had been their champion, a brilliant strategist, who used her skills to prevent conflicts rather than win them. The final insult, Liak explained during a rare moment of complete clarity, was perverting my strategic abilities, using my gift for peace to create perfect war. They discovered the original reconditioning facility's records, preserved by resistance members who had infiltrated the program. Elena watched in horror as holographic recordings showed Liak strapped to a neural reconditioning chair, screaming as her mind was systematically dismantled and rewired. They started with fear, explained one resistance scientist. Fear of failure, fear of disobedience. Then they built compliance atop that foundation. The perfect weapon doesn't question orders because questioning brings pain. And the name? Elena asked. Why did addressing her as Liak Kalar create such a strong response? Identity is stored differently than other memories, the scientist replied. Deeper, more fundamental. By using her name, you accessed neural pathways they couldn't completely override. The process of reversal was agonizingly slow. Some days brought dramatic breakthroughs, Liak speaking in complete sentences, recalling specific memories from her past, demonstrating emotional responses beyond anger and confusion. Other days saw painful setbacks as her conditioning reasserted itself, triggering episodes where the beast briefly resurfaced. Through it all, Elena remained by her side, a constant presence representing the human connection that had first breached the walls of conditioning. 3 weeks into their stay at the resistance outpost, alarms blared throughout the station. Imperial forces had penetrated the nebula's natural defenses, following the faint trail left by their escape from Kepler 442b. They never stopped looking, Liak observed grimly as they gathered in the command center. The Empire doesn't abandon valuable assets. We're not ready, protested one scientist. The counter-protocol needs more time to fully integrate. If we stop now, we have no choice, Liak interrupted. Her voice was stronger now, her speech patterns more natural. The physical changes remained, the armored integument, the enhanced physiology, but her eyes stayed steadily amber, and her movements had lost their mechanical quality. She turned to Elena. I need to leave. Draw them away from the outpost. You can't, Elena objected. Your treatment isn't complete. If they recapture you, they won't, Liak said with quiet certainty. Because I am not running. I am going to fight. She looked around at the assembled resistance members. How many others? How many like me are still trapped in reconditioning? 217 currently in active service, replied Master Nerith gravely. Plus those in development and training. Liak's expression hardened. Then we free them. All of them. A plan emerged with breathtaking speed. Liak's strategic brilliance now working for liberation rather than destruction. The Resistance had accumulated data on reconditioning facilities throughout Valaran space. With Dr. Sulai's help, they developed a transmission that could temporarily disrupt the neural interfaces of reconditioned subjects, creating windows of potential breakthrough. Not freedom, Sulai cautioned. Just confusion. Moments where they might question orders, like you did when Elena first called you by name. Moments are enough, Liak responded. Doubt is the beginning of freedom. The Imperial forces drew closer to the outpost. Time was running short. I'm coming with you, Elena declared, as Liak prepared to lead a small strike team to the nearest reconditioning facility. Too dangerous, Liak objected. This is not your fight. It became my fight the moment I spoke your name, Elena countered. Besides, someone needs to speak to the others as you wake them. Someone who sees them as people, not weapons. Liak studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Very well, but you follow my lead, without question. I won't lose you to the Empire's cruelty. The mission launched under cover of a particularly violent radiation storm. 2 small vessels slipped past the Imperial search pattern, their signatures masked by the nebula's natural interference. Aboard the lead ship, Liak stood at the tactical display, her strategic mind fully engaged as she plotted their approach to the reconditioning facility. Elena watched her with a mixture of pride and concern. Though Liak had made remarkable progress, the counter-protocol remained incomplete. Under extreme stress, the beast might still resurface, and they were heading into the heart of Imperial territory. "You're worried," Liak observed without looking up from the display. "Aren't you?" Elena asked. Liak considered this, head tilted in that distinctively Valaran gesture. "Yes," she finally acknowledged. "But not about myself. About those still trapped. About what we'll find." The reconditioning facility orbited a barren moon, in a remote system, isolated, heavily guarded. Its very existence classified within the Empire. Approaching undetected required all of Liak's strategic brilliance and the Resistance pilot's skill. They infiltrated during a shift change, using forged credentials and Liak's intimate knowledge of Imperial protocols. Dr. Sulai remained aboard their vessel, coordinating the transmission that would disrupt the neural interfaces when activated. Inside, the facility was clinically sterile, white corridors, subdued lighting, the occasional muffled scream echoing from distant chambers. Elena felt sick as they passed observation windows, showing subjects strapped to neural reconditioning chairs. Their faces contorted in agony as technicians calmly monitored displays. Liak moved with purpose, leading them to the central control hub. Her expression remained neutral, but Elena noticed the subtle tremor in her hands. This place held traumatic memories, now increasingly accessible as the counter-protocol progressed. "Are you all right?" Elena whispered as they paused at a junction. Liak's eyes met hers. "I remember everything now," she said simply. "What they did to me. What they made me do." Before Elena could respond, an alarm sounded subtle at first, then building in urgency. They'd been discovered. "Security breach in Sector 7, announced a calm voice over the facility's communication system. "All personnel implement containment protocols." Liak's expression hardened. "No more time for stealth. We take the control hub now." They abandoned caution, racing through corridors as facility security mobilized. Liak moved with lethal efficiency, disabling guards with precise strikes that incapacitated without killing. Elena followed, marveling at how Liak's combat skills remained intact while her purpose had transformed completely. They reached the control hub amidst chaos. Technicians fled as Liak burst through the doors, those who stayed offering minimal resistance. Within moments, they had control of the facility's central systems. "Transmitting now," Elena reported, connecting their systems to Dr. Sulai's device. Throughout the facility, neural interfaces flickered as the disruption signal propagated. On monitoring screens, they watched as reconditioned subjects, some fully transformed like Liak had been. Others, still in earlier stages, suddenly stopped following commands. Some collapsed in confusion. Others lashed out at their handlers. "Not enough," Liak muttered, studying the displays. "They're disoriented, but not breaking through." "They need what you had," Elena realized. "They need to hear their names." Liak nodded grimly. "Facility records, access subject identities." They worked frantically, pulling original identities from the facility's databases as security forces regrouped outside the hub. Liak established a facility-wide communication channel and began speaking not in Imperial Standard, but in the older Valaran dialect of House Kalar. "I am Liak Kalar," she announced, her voice steady and clear. "I was taken, as you were taken, broken, as you were broken. But I remember now. I remember who I was. And you can remember too." She began reading names from the database, each followed by house affiliation, former rank or position, defining achievements. Elena watched the monitors as subjects responded, some with confusion, others with dawning recognition. They're responding, Elena breathed. It's working. Liak continued the litany of names as security forces began attempting to breach the hub's sealed doors. Time was running out. We need to release them, Elena urged. Open the containment cells. Too dangerous, Liak countered. Some aren't ready. Some will still follow Imperial programming. A decision balanced on a knife's edge. Risk releasing those still partially controlled by reconditioning, or leave them to be recaptured and wiped clean again. In that moment of hesitation, the hub doors exploded inward. Imperial forces poured through the breach, led by a familiar figure, Commander Corvex. His face twisted with rage. The Empire's most valuable asset, he snarled, advancing on Liak. Turned traitor by a human sentimentality. Liak straightened to her full height, facing him without fear. Not traitor, patriot. Valara was once honorable. You perverted that honor. Pretty words from a broken weapon, Corvex sneered. Your reconditioning will be thorough this time. No memories, no identity, just obedience. My name, Liak said firmly, is Liak Kalar, and I choose freedom. She moved with explosive force, engaging Corvex while calling to Elena, Release them, all of them. Elena didn't hesitate. As Liak and Corvex fought, blur of motion too fast for human eyes to follow, she initiated the emergency protocols, opening every containment cell in the facility. Alarms blared as chaos erupted throughout the complex. On the monitors, Elena watched reconditioned subjects emerging from their cells, confronting their handlers. Some fought, others fled. Many simply stood in confusion as long-suppressed identities struggled to resurface. The battle between Liak and Corvex reached its climax. Though enhanced by reconditioning, Liak fought with technique rather than brute force, using Corvex's aggression against him. When he lunged with a neural disruptor designed to incapacitate reconditioned subjects, she sidestepped and redirected his momentum, sending him crashing into a control panel. You cannot win, Corvex gasped, struggling to his feet. The Empire will never stop hunting you. Any of you. Perhaps, Liak acknowledged, but we will never stop fighting. And unlike you, we remember what we fight for. With a final, precise strike, she rendered him unconscious. Then she turned to Elena, who had finished the release protocols. We need to go, Liak urged. This facility will self-destruct if compromised beyond recovery. They fled through corridors now filled with confused, frightened former subjects. Liak called out to them in that ancient Velaran dialect, directing them toward escape vessels. Some followed immediately, others hesitated, still caught between programming and emerging identity. We can't save them all, Elena realized with growing despair as the facility's self-destruct sequence initiated. We've given them a chance, Liak responded. More than they had before. Some will choose freedom, as I did. They reached their vessel as the facility began to tear itself apart. Dr. Sulai had the engines primed, ready for immediate departure. As they lifted off, they watched dozens of small craft following their example, carrying newly awakened subjects away from their prison. The facility exploded behind them in a blinding flash that momentarily outshone the distant sun. Liak watched silently, her expression unreadable. How many? Elena asked quietly. 87 vessels departed before destruction, Sulai reported. Approximately 160 subjects escaped. And the others? Liak's eyes remained fixed on the fading explosion. They made their choices. Some couldn't break free. Some didn't want to. The journey back to the Helix Nebula was subdued. Though they had struck a significant blow against the Empire's reconditioning program, the cost had been high, and the liberated subjects faced a long, difficult road to recovery, when Liak herself was still traveling. In the weeks that followed, the Resistance outpost transformed into a rehabilitation center. Former subjects arrived in waves, drawn by the disruption signal that continued to broadcast across Imperial communication channels. Dr. Sulai worked tirelessly alongside Valaran scientists, refining the counter-protocol to help those at various stages of reconditioning. Elena found herself serving as a bridge between Federation resources and the growing resistance movement. What had begun as a desperate attempt to negotiate with the beast had evolved into something far more profound, the beginnings of a revolution within the Valaran Empire. Liak's recovery continued steadily. The neural interface was finally removed in a painstaking procedure that left her weakened, but more fully herself than she had been since her reconditioning. The physical changes remained, her enhanced strength and reflexes. The integument that served as living armor, but they were now tools under her control, rather than aspects of imposed weaponization. 6 months after their escape from Kepler 442b, Liak Kalar stood before the assembled former subjects and resistance members in the outpost's central chamber. Elena watched from nearby, heart swelling with pride at the transformation. House Kalar once stood for protection of the vulnerable and preservation of peace. Liak began, her voice strong and clear. Today, I reclaim that legacy, not alone, but with all of you who have found your way back to yourselves. She raised her hand, revealing the ancient insignia of House Kalar restored from resistance archives and modified to incorporate a subtle symbol of broken chains. We are not weapons. We are not beasts. We are Valarans who remember what that truly means to use strength in service of compassion, to employ strategy in pursuit of justice. The chamber erupted in approval, the distinctive Valaran gesture of crossed arms and lowered heads that signified profound respect. Later, alone with Elena in the observation dome, Liak gazed out at the swirling beauty of the Helix Nebula. The Empire still stands, she acknowledged. The reconditioning program continues, though disrupted. Our work has only begun. But it has begun, Elena pointed out. 6 months ago, you were a weapon they called Beast. Now you lead a movement for freedom. Liak turned to her, amber eyes reflecting the nebula's glow. Because you saw past the beast to the person beneath. You spoke my name when everyone else saw only a monster. I saw someone who needed to be recognized, Elena said simply. To be known. Liak smiled, a full, genuine expression that transformed her features. In my culture, there is a saying, to name something is to begin its existence. You gave me back my name, Elena Maris, and in doing so, you gave me back myself. Outside the viewports, the nebula shifted, currents of stellar gas forming new patterns of light and shadow. Within those patterns, vessels moved, some carrying former subjects seeking sanctuary. Others, Federation ships bringing supplies and support for the growing resistance. The beast was gone. In its place stood Liak Keller, strategist, leader, person. And beside her stood Elena Maris, the human who had dared to see beyond the weapon, to the soul imprisoned within. Together, they faced the nebula and the challenges that lay beyond it, knowing that the revolution they had begun would transform not just the Valaran Empire, but the understanding of personhood throughout known space. For in the end, it wasn't military might that had stopped the unstoppable beast. It was a simple act of recognition, the power of a name, spoken with compassion and hope. And that had made all the difference.